Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are getting a chance to watch this. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We are from the Office of the Prevention for Harassment and Discrimination, also known as OPHD here on campus. And we're going to be spending some time today talking about bystander intervention, how we can be an active bystander here on our campus. I'm Brittany Hopkins. I work in our office with investigations and training, and I'm going to have my other colleagues introduce themselves as well.
My name's Tracy Fleming, and I'm also in the OPHD office, and I'm the Learning and Development Specialist.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Edens. I am an investigation and training specialist.
Hi, all. I'm Noelle. I'm a Learning and Development Specialist with OPHD.
Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. The bulk of our conversation is going to be about bystander intervention. And then the remaining time that we have, we're going to go over just some brief things about our office so you can get familiar and also maybe reacquainted if you've had some trainings with us before. I want to go over some group norms. The first and foremost we talk about is to take care of your needs. Some of the things that we can be talking about may be upsetting to folks. While we encourage you to lean into any discomfort, if something passes that line to be upsetting, please take a moment and take care of yourself however you feel best. The bulk, like I said, is going to be about bystander intervention, but we will talk about some statistics, and it's likely that someone you know or possibly even you has experienced some of these things. The next piece is that we are all here to learn. We don't all have the answers. Even the four of us in this room right now, we are not people who know the ins and outs of this. We're all here to learn. So use this as an opportunity to help grow. Ask questions of yourself. Feel free to email or reach out to us afterwards if you want to clarify things. You're taking it online, so you have the opportunity to really pause and think through some of these things. And we're all at different points with this material. The next one is respect. And I think when we're looking at online trainings, it's just making sure that we're actually listening to them, being attentive to them, taking the opportunities to answer some of the questions that will give you moments to pause for. And then participate. We don't want you to just sit through this training and have it on in the background. We want you to be thinking about these things because we really believe that through trainings like this and you all participating in it, we can really make a difference here on our campus. I want us to go over this definition that we have called interpersonal violence. We're going to spend the presentation using this term, so I want us to get familiar with it beforehand. So what we've defined here at Sonoma State as interpersonal violence is verbal, mental, economic, physical, or sexual actions or threats, which are singular or repeated. So those things can be actions that have already happened or that someone is threatening to happen. And they can be one-time instances or happening multiple times. The next piece of this little equation is that it is those types of actions or threats that a reasonable person in a similar circumstance with similar identities would find intimidating, frightening, harassing, stalking, terrorizing, or abusive. And as you can see at the bottom, it says such behaviors may include threats of violence to oneself. It could be to someone's family members, to their pets or property, or any type of violence that's involving members of our Sonoma State community. So as we use this term interpersonal violence throughout the presentation, keep this definition in mind. I also want you to take a moment to physically pause your video, and I want you to think, what are some things that come to mind when you're thinking of this, this definition? Hopefully you're back after pausing. Let's go over some statistics here, specifically at SSU. So out of over 5,000 returning students that we had in 2019, 32% of those students at SSU said that they've had an experience where they felt that someone did not fully respect their lack of consent, meaning someone moved forward in some type of sexual act when they weren't explicitly saying yes to that. That's a huge number. In 2018, out of over 3,100 of our students, 78% of them believe that sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking are significant problems on college campus. In that same survey, 78% believed that they would be likely to witness a situation with a high risk for sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking during their college experience, meaning that they saw themselves as someone who could intervene and take action to help prevent harm. And then in the 2018-2019 school year, OPHD, our office, received 69 reports of sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, relationship violence, and stalking. One important thing to note about this last statistic is that we know that these things go really underreported. So these are just the instances that our office was aware of. As we can see by looking at this, It's a problem that people realize is happening at SSU. As we go on to the next slide, we'll see that we are not unique to this problem. This is something that is happening on all of our college campuses. As we look at this first statistic here, sexual violence on college campuses is pervasive. Overall, 13% of all students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate students, experience some form of forcible or attempted forcible penetration or sexual assault, meaning a different type of unwanted touching through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. Among undergraduate students, 26.4% of females, so a little more than 1 in 4, and over 6.8% of males have experienced that forcible or attempted forced penetration or another form of sexual violence. We see that these numbers are even higher for the folks who are part of the LGBTQIA+ community. As many as 3 in 4 experience some form of sexual harassment. 1 in 3 students of all gender identities experience relationship violence while they're in college. That is a huge number, and it's breaking down some of those stereotypes we think about who is on the receiving end of some of that violence that happens. In college, over 90% of people know the person who has caused this form of sexual violence against them. It's not this idea of a stranger in the bush or someone that you don't know. The overwhelming majority of the time, it's people that you do know. It could be a classmate, it could be a partner of yours, it could be someone who's in a club with you. We see that alcohol is present in the overwhelming amount of reports that we see on college campuses regarding sexual misconduct. And then during the first several weeks of school, that's when we see the highest rates of sexual misconduct happening, particularly for first and second year students. And lastly, ages 18 to 24, people who are in that age range, which is the typical college age range, they are most likely to experience forms of stalking. So as we can see, this problem extends far beyond SSU and is a national problem that everyone on college campuses is experiencing. I want to take a moment. We are going to watch a video shortly. So I'm going to share my screen to that video. And I want you to just sort of think about how this video puts into perspective some of these statistics that we've been talking about.
Team versus team.
That's as good as it gets.
Oh man, I've never had more fun my whole life.
Daddy's had a beer. I'm gonna go to another one.
Hey.
It's your card?
No, Lamorne, stop doing magic. You're not good at it.
Guys! Oh, dude! There's a bear in your other room here.
What? Oh, that's just the big, angry, hungry bear. Just pretend it's not there.
Oh, really? Man, it'll just go away? What are you talking about?
No, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I don't know what to do about it, so I just ignore it.
So it's not dangerous, right?
Define dangerous. It's a bear. But, it's not going to eat all of us. It only eats like 1 in 5s. I said only 1 in 5, so we're fine.
That's a lot, man.
That means one of us is gonna be eaten.
Statistically. That doesn't mean 1 of us. It means 1 in 5 people get eaten.
Why aren't you doing something about this, man?
Hey, what do you want me to do about it? You guys know the old saying, bears will be bears.
That's not a saying.
Lamorne, a bear will be a bear. So
You can't just blame the bear, not when it's attacking 20% of the people who come here.
20%. I said 1 in 5.
Yes, that's 20%.
No, it isn't. It's 1 in 5. You math nerd. Let's pile on this guy.
Dude, you gotta get rid of this thing. Or at least warn us that there is a bear in the other room, man. We gotta look out for each other. What are you doing?
Hey, what happens between you guys and the bear is none of my business.
Wait, how is this none of your business, man? 1 in 5 people are gonna get attacked by this bear!
Guys, you're overreacting. The bear's not going to eat all of us. It'll be less than a quarter of us.
None of us should die!
And it affects us all, Jake. 1 in 5. How can you ignore something so important? How can I protect your friend? 1 in 5, 1 in 5.
Oh, that next video could have been fun. All right, everyone. So like the video said, there's also statistics that say 1 in 5 women may be sexually assaulted by the time that they finish their undergraduate career. That's a huge, overwhelming problem. And we saw how it affects other people of different gender identities as well. The video kind of puts into perspective that we wouldn't let that happen, right? If it was a bear in the room that was going to eat someone, and it kind of puts the onus on us of we should make sure that we're preventing this type of harm as well. I want you to take a moment to pause and think of what do these statistics and the examples that we've thought bring up for you. So go ahead and physically pause and we'll come back in a second. I also want you to think of separately, how do you want people's college experience to be different here on campus? How is it that you would like to see change? We believe that we are all connected to these issues of interpersonal violence here on our campus. And we believe that together, we really can make the difference. We can be the change that we want to see here on campus. And so we'll spend the rest of our time together talking about how we can get some really tangible tools to make sure that we are equipped to make this difference here.
The first step towards making the change on our campus is being an active bystander. And there are 5 simple steps to becoming an active bystander. But before we dive into those, let's talk a little bit about what this word bystander means. Consider these questions. How do you define a bystander? And what are our ideas about bystanders? Are they negative, positive? Take a moment, pause the training, and consider it. Okay. We're going to move on to the next slide now. And when you're thinking about that word bystander, I want you now to kind of take it a step further and think of a time that you either did or did not intervene, or perhaps you saw someone else intervene on someone's behalf, or a time when someone intervened on your behalf. Once you have that example in mind, consider what are the reasons that person did or did not intervene? What may have motivated them? How did you feel about that experience? Did it impact you? Did it change the way you considered a bystander or how you might intervene in the future? And what was or could have been the result of their decision? Pause and consider these. Thanks. Researchers have been studying the bystander effect, and while it's often a mixture of positive and negative connotations, we know that bystanders are not directly causing the harm when they choose to intervene or not. They are, however, passively accepting it when they choose to not intervene. Researchers have found that the greater number of bystanders, the slower a person is to act, the less they feel personally responsible to step in. Witnessing one person, however, encourages others to step in. So we're just looking for that one person to take action. Those who are asked to help are far more likely to intervene than those who are not asked to help. So knowing these, how can that change our behavior? How can we keep these thoughts in the back of our head next time that we witness harm being done? We can be an active bystander through following these 5 simple steps. First, be observant. Second, recognize problematic events when you see them. 3, assume responsibility. 4, determine ways to help. And 5, take action. The first step is easy. Be observant. Keep your eyes open at what's going on around you. Take a moment and see if you can find SpongeBob in this picture. Have you found him yet? This might seem really obvious, but we have to make a conscious decision to be aware of our surroundings. Just like this photo, we might assume that there's nothing out of the ordinary happening. It just looks like a photo full of minions. But once we kind of make that conscious choice to be active and pay attention to what's happening around us, we might find those things that are sticking out, that are problematic, that might cause concern and need our attention. A little bit later, we're going to look at a couple of different scenarios that might arise for you and ways that we can work through them.
So we're going to look now at the step 2. How do we recognize problematic events? How do we know if what we're seeing, hearing, reading, maybe even doing ourselves is something that needs intervention? These things can come up in your interactions with people, but they can also happen through our technology, like our social media, our group chats, and things like that. When you're being observant with that first step that Noelle talked about, this one naturally follows. So we're going to look at a range of problematic behaviors that are related to interpersonal violence. We have here what is called the continuum of violence. So this is a broad range of problematic behaviors that need intervention so that we can help prevent harm amongst other people in our community. It starts off as things that may be seemingly harmless, but it progresses to things that are more serious. Eventually, it crosses a line from creepy or uncomfortable to illegal, and really none of it along the spectrum is okay. We need to understand that the behaviors on the left side of the spectrum are super important for us to intervene on so that we can help prevent further harm from happening later down on the spectrum. A lot of these behaviors and attitudes on the left are precursors for things that happen further down the continuum of violence. For example, coercing someone to have sex is not far from threatening someone to have sex, which is not far from forcing someone to have sex. Each of these pieces contributes to a culture that normalizes and also often trivializes interpersonal violence. And when we accept or tolerate things on the left, we make room for the things to happen on the right, and we make excuses for them. That's why we really need to step up. We need to hold each other accountable when we see or hear behaviors anywhere along the spectrum. And even those ones that we see on the left, we need to do something. It's really vital that we're intervening early along the spectrum as active bystanders so that we can help make that cultural shift and make the behaviors on the right less likely to happen. We're going to look at some red flags across 3 common types of interpersonal violence. So I want you to take a moment and think of each of these 3 topics. So sexual misconduct, so unwanted touching of some sort, relationship violence, which could be physical, verbal, emotional, economic, stalking, so repeated unwanted contact. I want you to think of what are some examples or red flags of each of these things. So take a few moments and come up with a few examples under each list for yourself. Okay. What's really important to know is that when we're looking at red flags, this is not us blaming a person for these things happening to them, but it's behaviors that we can be conscious of. So if you're seeing them, we can take action to prevent harm. So when we're thinking of sexual misconduct, here are some potential red flags. A person who is ignoring cues, so they're not paying attention to someone's body language or even their verbal language that's happening. They're kind of pushing past that. Someone who is trying to convince someone to engage in sexual activity with them. That person should be saying yes on their own accord. We should not be guilting, pressuring, or coercing someone. With taking advantage of someone, it could be targeting a person who's been heavily drinking, intentionally giving a person more alcohol or other substances, or maybe separating a person from their group so that they're more isolated. Force is someone being physically aggressive towards someone and making them do something they don't want to do. And incapacitation is another red flag. So excessive alcohol consumption. I want you to pause for a moment and think, what are some signs of excessive alcohol consumption? Things where you can tell someone has had too much to drink. Some of the things you may have thought of are things like slurred speech, stumbling around, definitely vomiting, someone who's passed out or unconscious. It's really important to know that with incapacitation, a person may be physically awake. They could even possibly be saying yes, but if they reach that point where they've had too much alcohol consumption and they're showing some of these signs, that is not a valid consent. And we need to make sure that we're recognizing that as a red flag for folks. We don't want just any old yes from someone. We want something that is clear, willful, and while someone is capacitated to make that choice. When we're looking at relationship violence, again, this could be something that's a romantic relationship. It can also happen between relationships of friends or co-workers, if there's a power differential like students and teachers, coaches and athletes. So with jealousy, someone may try and justify their actions. I just care about you so much. Our relationship means so much. I love you. That's why I'm acting this way. Trying to really make excuses for that person. They could be controlling that person, what they do, what they wear, where they go, who they see, who they talk to, and manipulating the circumstances to really be in their favor. Isolation can be happening. Physical isolation, definitely. So pulling people away from their support groups or, physically taking them somewhere else. But that emotional isolation, which is the one of taking people away from their support groups, is what we see super common. If we separate someone from their support systems, then it creates more dependency on the person that is perpetrating that violence against them. And this is the most commonly used tactic in abusive relationships. And I want you to consider for a moment why that might be. Why is isolating someone so powerful? The next one we're going to talk about is the unrealistic expectations. The idea that you can never get it right. The goalpost is always moving. You think you've met the mark and then it's always changing. You may feel like you're walking on eggshells. It may be possible to please that person for a short-term basis, but long-term it never is. And it's keeping that person thinking, well, if I just do this, then it'll be better. And the reality is, in an abusive or violent relationship, that target is always moving. The person may be never at fault. You or someone else is always to blame for that. Well, if I didn't do X, if you didn't do X, then I wouldn't have had to do Z. They don't take responsibility for their actions or the impact that it may have on you, and they don't make lasting changes. In a relationship, you should never feel afraid of your relationship or your partner or your friend or your coworker, whoever it may be. And when we think about threats, it could be something that's directly happening to you, but it can also be to other members of your family, people that you know, pets, things like that. And the last one is any type of harm. That is a huge red flag. You should not have to be harmed in your relationship. As we move on to stalking, these are all about repeated unwanted contact that we talked about. So excessive contact, this can be in person, but also digitally. Someone who repeatedly sends DMs or calls someone or texts them, not taking no for an answer. It could be someone showing up unannounced, uninvited, or being coincidentally at the same place as that person, especially when that's happening repeatedly. That can be a really big red flag. If they're monitoring the person, so they know where someone is, where they have been, who they've seen. In the age of social media, a lot of our information is readily available to folks, and sometimes people may do excessive digging to find that out. If something feels odd that they really shouldn't know about, listen to your gut. Knowing information, something that you didn't provide to that person or that would be really difficult to find again, or unwanted gifts randomly left for a person, odd gifts, expensive gifts. There are definitely other forms of interpersonal violence like we talked about earlier, but these are some of the most common ones that we're seeing on college campuses. And if we're looking out for these red flags, then we can better intervene in those situations.
Step 3 is assume responsibility. Thank you. So it's important that when we see a problematic event, we assume personal responsibility and decide to be the person who is going to do something and intervene. So we can all be active bystanders by taking the initiative to do something when we see something that doesn't look right or doesn't feel right, and not assuming that someone else will help. We can make it. We need to make sure that we're stepping up and not taking on the attitude of it's somebody's problem or it's not my business, or, some of the things that are commonly said. Let's change the culture of SSU. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to be a part of the solution here. 93% of students at SSU said that everyone has the responsibility to take action against sexual assault, dating, violence, domestic violence, and stalking. Excuse me. So we're not some fringe group trying to gain your buy-in. These are the principles that your peers here at SSU believe in and stated, and they think that they're important, and we do too. 93% said that everyone has a responsibility to take action against sexual assault, dating, violence, and stalking. We want this to be a part of the SSU culture. We care about each other, and we have a duty to look out for one another and intervene when we suspect that something doesn't look right or doesn't feel right. This is not an impossible task. 93% of folks believe that sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking can be prevented here at SSU. 94% of SSU students believe that serious acts of violence could be prevented even with simple actions. So we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but it doesn't take a lot to make a difference. Simple acts can prevent harm in our community and just create an overall safer environment for everyone. And the last statistic here, 94% felt highly motivated or motivated to take action as a bystander against sexual assault, dating and domestic violence, and stalking. Not only do we think that others should intervene, but your peers are ready to intervene themselves. So what we're going to do now is talk about how folks can intervene in a way that feels safe to them and that feels safe to you. So this is a really cool saying. I always wondered why someone didn't do something about that. And then I realized I am someone. Being an active bystander, we have the opportunity to take care of each other and create the campus environment that we all want to be able to thrive in and just create an overall great college experience. So we're going to determine ways to help. There's 4 steps. We are being observant, we're recognizing problematic events, assuming responsibility, and now it's time to figure out how we're going to intervene and help if and when we see something, because we all face different obstacles, and let's figure out how we can step up and do it in a way that feels safe for us. So let's be honest. What are some of the things that might be issues for us? I'm shy. I'm concerned about my safety. We don't necessarily need to be outgoing. We don't necessarily need to feel like, it's not our place. Everyone in this community has the right and the ability to step in when they see harm is happening. And now we're making it an expectation. If you see something happening to me, I want you to step in and help me, and I will do the same for you. So we all have obstacles that might prevent us. However, let's talk about some ways that we could do this, be helpful, get past our own barriers, and help each other out. So before I tell you the 3 ways to intervene, I want you to take a moment and think about your own barrier. Why might you not readily step in to help? Okay. I'm going to give you some ways to help. The first way is to be direct. So we all have different obstacles. There's always something that we can do in a way that feels safe and comfortable to us. So there are 3 main ways I want to talk about. The first one is being direct, which would be like to approach the situation and individuals directly involved and just ask, hey, are you okay? Do you need some help? Is there anything I can do? Be a resource to them. If they're okay, then, no big whoop. But if they need help, you can be the help that they need to get them to a safer situation. The next way is to delegate. So let's say you don't necessarily feel comfortable approaching the situation directly yourself. Delegate means getting others involved. So that could be you speaking with a friend or friends and saying, hey, I think this person needs some help. Let's go help them. Or if it doesn't feel safe for you to do that, you could call and ask. If you're living on campus, you could ask the police. So if it's on campus, call the police. You could ask a residence life staff member. You could let an advisor know or a coach know or any number of folks here that serve in leadership roles. Any of us can help. But the important thing is to let someone know if you have a suspicion. So that would be to delegate. The next way is to create a distraction. So right in the moment, you could create a distraction by saying or doing something that'll interrupt the moment. Hey, would you go to the bathroom with me? Hey, can I use your phone? Hey, can you help me look for my phone? Or, would you walk me to my car? Any of those things could create a distraction and give a person who's being impacted in this way the opportunity to get out of that situation. And it all depends on what's happening in the moment. There really is no wrong decision. So you get to choose whichever way that works best for you, given the obstacles or barriers that you are facing in that moment. And, today it might be direct, tomorrow it might be delegate, the next day it might be distract. It's not wrong. The important part is that you help when you can. So number 5 is to take action. So once you determine the best way to intervene, either being direct, delegating, or distracting, it's time to take action and put your plan into motion. And this is how you get to be an active bystander. So we're going to go over a few scenarios, and I'm going to read them to you and then just take a moment and think about, go ahead and pause the video and think about what is the best way for you to intervene. All right, so which one were you most likely to do? To be direct, delegate, or create a distraction? And why? The best thing you can do is practice what you might do in the situation so that your first time is not your first time.
All right, I have a second scenario for you to consider and think about. Your roommate started dating someone new who's been getting mad at them over the smallest things. And when you come home one evening, you can hear your roommate getting yelled at from outside your door. What are you most likely to do? And then why? Is it direct, delegate, or distract? And remember that the choice is individual and no right or wrong answer, and it can change from situation to situation. Take a second and think about what you might be able to help out with in this scenario. All right, and our last scenario is you're leaving the library at night and you see your friend's ex-girlfriend hanging around waiting for him. She's been showing up wherever he is despite him asking her to stop. What would you do and why? Is it direct, delegate, or distract? And keeping in mind that the choice again is individual. There is no wrong or right. And take a moment and think about how you could help prevent harm in a situation like this, and what you feel comfortable doing. As we talked to you about at the beginning of the video, we're the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination. And here's the team all together. Sarah Clegg is our Title IX officer, and she's also the Title IX coordinator for the campus. Jennifer Edens and Brittany Hopkins are both investigators and training specialists. Brittany is our senior investigator, and both Noelle and I are learning and development specialists. Our emails are down below, and any one of us are ready, willing, and able to help help you out where we can. Our emails are below, and someday soon, I hope you can see us on campus and give us a shout out. OPHD oversees the implementation of the federal Title IX policy, and Title IX was established to help people from discrimination based on sex, and it reduces the barriers they face. Title IX is a federal law that states, no person in the United States shall on the basis of sex be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Title IX specifically covers sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, relationship violence, and stalking. In addition to the federal Title IX regulations, OPHD follows policies around education and resolution from the CSU system. The executive orders OPHD operates under expand beyond Title IX to protect people from other forms of discrimination and harassment. And with this, all students have the right to participate fully in CSU programs and activities free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The CSU prohibits harassment of any kind, including sexual harassment, as well as sexual misconduct, dating, and domestic violence and stalking. The CSU's discrimination policy covers Title IX and goes beyond that to cover other forms of harassment and discrimination as outlined in the slide above. And as the slide reads, the purpose for our students and employees is to participate fully on a campus free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation.
So I want to talk a little bit about the scope of our office. Our office responds to all complaints of discrimination and harassment, retaliation, dating and or domestic violence, stalking, sexual misconduct, as well as student and employee relationships. OPHD works with people, reports, and cases regarding all of those things. And discrimination and harassment based on protected class means like race or sexual orientation, religion, national origin, ability status. So we handle cases where discrimination and harassment occurs because of protected classes, not an action. And you have to be that protected class. For example, it could be discrimination if the fishing club says you can't join because you served in the Army versus you being a veteran, and a fishing club says you can't join because they require a level of experience that you don't have. So the difference is they're saying you can't join because of your protected identity. So other forms of harassment, such as roommate conflicts, are handled through student conduct. We also look at relationship violence with an intimate partner. So like a roommate conflict is not something that would fall into our wheelhouse. However, if people were involved in an intimate relationship, then yes, that would be us. So we also look at stalking, which is repeated unwanted contact, sexual misconduct, unwanted physical contact or harassment, relationships between students and employees where there is a power dynamic and it blurs the lines of consent. All right, so our role is we are a neutral office. That means that we don't side with the complaining party or the party who responds, but we provide our services to all parties, all members of the university community without advocating for one side or the other. We are charged with providing resources and accommodations to anyone who's involved with our office as they are appropriate. We provide fair and impartial support and resolutions. The things that we are looking for mostly, our main goal is to make sure that we have community safety and to provide remedies and reduce the impact of accountability. So our process is an administrative adjudication. So we're not necessarily working with the law enforcement, which we can at times, but our process is completely within the university. We're looking at what the California State University policies are, so not the laws outside of the university. There are times that we do work with the police, but it's not always. Our main focus is enforcing the CSU policies and making sure that we are in compliance with Title IX. And we work with students, faculty, staff, and affiliated parties. So like if there was a sports camp on campus or anyone who's visiting and they're impacted or they cause an issue, we would look into those complaints. Our overall goal is to increase community safety, provide remedies, reduce the impact of harm that's been done, and provide accountability when our policy has been violated. We're an administrative process. We have authority over campus and campus life. We are not criminal investigators. We're enforcing policies outlined in our executive orders and mandated through Title IX. So like I said before, we're not dealing with laws. And there sometimes can be an overlap, but we're looking for totally different things. In the criminal process, they have different definitions and scope and processes and burdens of proof and repercussions. So with our processes, we're looking at whether our policies were violated or not, and what are the possible repercussions of that for the involved parties. We are also tasked with prevention and education. And so we provide a number of training opportunities such as this one, and outreach and education, because it's our goal to just have an environment where people are aware of the things that can happen and take steps to prevent them from happening. So we're not first responders. We're not the people that would be called in the midst of a situation, especially if there's a level of immediacy or danger. That would be like, you know, the police or any other responsible folks who are around who can take charge of the situation. We generally work from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So the university provides many resources here on campus, and here are some of them. OPHD is our office, and that's our phone number. There's CAPS, which is the Counseling and Psychological Services Office, which is available to all university students. We also have a confidential advocate who is available to support students who've been impacted by trauma. And it doesn't have to be something that happened here at SSU. It can be something that happened before, or even something that happened while they were a student at SSU and it's impacting them. So that is a resource. Student Healthcare Center, University Police, Dean of Students Office, and the Hub Cultural Center. And I just want to quickly mention that the asterisk or the stars next to CAPS and Confidential Advocate mean that those are completely confidential resources. The other resources are not. Specifically, Student Healthcare Center, if they suspect incidents of domestic violence, they must make a report to the police. They don't have to report to our office, but they do have to report to the police. Our community resources include Verity, which is the 24-hour rape crisis hotline here in Sonoma County. There's the Sonoma County Family Justice Center, which is an umbrella organization that provides support for folks who, families, as well as individuals who may be experiencing any number of issues that are impacting their ability to be successful, not just in school, but in life. The YWCA is a 24-hour domestic violence crisis hotline. And then, of course, there's local police, and SSU works with Sutter Health for SART exams for people who have experienced sexual assault.
So as Jennifer mentioned, there are quite a few people who help deal with issues around interpersonal violence here on our campus, and I want to sort of break down what the difference is between each of us. So as we look across the top of each of these, we have the University Police, OPHD, and our confidential advocate. The first line for everyone is really what action that we take on campus. So the University Police are concerned with criminal prosecution. Again, OPHD deals with administrative adjudication, and the confidential advocate is doing advocacy on an individual level for folks who have experienced forms of trauma. The second one is the purpose of that office. So the University Police's purpose is to enforce laws. Jennifer mentioned we're here to enforce policies in OPHD, and the confidential advocate is there to provide support for people. With the University Police, when they're looking at whether or not a law was violated, they use a standard called beyond a reasonable doubt. So barring anything really wild, we're pretty confident that this happened. We're very confident that this happened. In OPHD, when we're looking at whether or not our policies were violated, we use what's called a preponderance of evidence. So about 51+%, where it's more likely than not that something is happening. There's absolutely no level to meet with a confidential advocate. That could be trauma that happened directly to you. It could be you experiencing some of that secondary trauma from it happening to a friend or a family member, someone who's on your sports team, someone who's in your fraternity or sorority. The University Police are helping all persons in their municipal. Like Jennifer mentioned, we're here for students, staff, faculty, and affiliated parties within OPHD. And the confidential advocate helps students only. University Police, their goal is community safety and the retribution piece. We want to also promote a safe community here in OPHD. We have a responsibility to remedy and reduce the impact when harm has been caused, and also, again, to provide that accountability. The confidential advocate focuses on resiliency, empowerment, and personal well-being as people are navigating that journey. The University Police are the only first responders here. If there's an emergency that's happening, call them first. We're here in OPHD Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, even virtually. You can always reach us by email. The phone number that we listed as well, you can call there and we get sent directly those voicemails that happen. And the confidential advocate is also not a first responder. She's available from 8:30 to 5:30. Again, also available while we're learning remotely, and definitely when we're back on campus as well. There are several ways that you can report to OPHD. The first one is that you can fill out our online form, which we'll look at in a moment. We have that available online so that people can fill it out, and you can choose to identify yourself. You can choose to fill it out anonymously. You could fill it out for someone else if you've seen harm that's happening. That's part of the delegating thing that we talked about. Maybe you didn't feel comfortable in that moment taking action, but you want to delegate to our office and we can help connect them with resources. We have employees who report to OPHD. So any employee on this campus, with the exception of the counselors and our confidential advocate, if they learn of anything that is related to sexual misconduct, relationship violence, or stalking, they have an obligation to report that to our office and report whatever details it is that they know. Unfortunately, they cannot keep that information private, but it's an opportunity that you know that there are so many people who are available here on campus that are able to help you. And we really have a responsibility when we learn about these incidents of harm to make sure that we're connecting our students with resources. And the last way is that you can email us or you can talk to OPHD either when we're in person one day or over the phone. All three of these ways, we get an incident report that comes into our office. I want to spend a minute and just look at our online reporting form. So this is what our website looks like as of recently. If you've taken any trainings with us in the past, you'll realize it is a significant upgrade to what we used to have beforehand. So you can go on here, and as you can see, there's a big red square on the left-hand side that says report an incident using our online reporting form. Once you click that, it'll be taken to this page where you just fill out as much information as you have available or that you want to share. When this gets sent to our office, then we reach out and follow up with the person. Again, this can be completed anonymously for yourself or for somebody else for us to reach out and get them help. Sometimes it can be, intimidating for some people to reach out to their friends and say, hey, like, should we connect you with these resources? So this can be a really great tool if you're recognizing that someone needs help, and we can be that bridge to help get them there.
Once a disclosure has happened and it is reported to OPHD, the OPHD will reach out to the student who's been impacted, and we will try to connect to the student with various resources or accommodations. We can help with things like changing a class schedule or getting a new roommate, helping with grades, anything that can help, as we mentioned earlier, remove some of those barriers to being successful here on campus. We'll also provide options to the student if they would like to pursue something called an early resolution agreement or an administrative investigation. And we'll look over those in just a moment. But I do want to make it clear that it is completely up to the student to drive that process. They can choose to just take advantage of some of the resources and accommodations we offer, or they can choose to make a decision about the early resolution or investigation. They can also choose to do nothing. It's completely up to the student. Here's a little bit more information about the difference between what an early or informal resolution agreement is, as well as an investigation. So with an early resolution or an ERA, the complainant will meet with our office with OPHD to talk about their concern and what resolutions might be possible for them. After that, our investigators will talk with all the parties involved and try to come to some type of resolution that everyone can agree to. As long as everyone agrees to that resolution, it's considered resolved. This solution does not involve a deep investigation into the facts. We may do some inquiries, but it's not a deep investigation, and we will not issue a finding of a policy violation. On the other hand, an investigation goes a little bit more in depth. If a student chooses to pursue an investigation, they'll file a formal complaint with our office, and then our investigators will conduct interviews and collect evidence. Mostly we're looking at things like pictures or text messages. As Jennifer and Brittany have made clear, we're not the police, we're not CSI, so we're not going to be going in there with in-depth kits, but we will gather whatever evidence we can, and then also give both parties an opportunity to review and respond to the evidence that we have collected. There will be a determination made about whether or not a policy was violated, and again, it's just that more likely than not, that 51% or more. In some cases, depending on the severity of the complaint, there might be a hearing involved. Both parties have the right to appeal the outcome of the investigation to the chancellor's office. Throughout this process, students have the following rights: the right to a fair and equitable process, to an impartial investigation, and to a private investigation. They have a right to look at interim measures, to have an advisor throughout the process, to identify witnesses and provide evidence, to request information and review evidence. Finally, both parties have a right to appeal. If you have any other questions, we're always here. ophd@sonoma.edu is a great way to get in touch. You're also welcome to fill out the Maxient form or respond to our individual emails. We thank you guys so much for spending this time with us today, and we hope that we leave you feeling a little bit more empowered to step in and help reduce harm when you witness it happening in our Sonoma State community. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.